So this is my rotifer culture bucket. It's been going for a few months, and it's had a little bit of ups and downs, but generally it's pretty stable. I feed it once a day. I feed it with RotiGrow Complete. It's the RG Complete feed from Reed Mariculture. And we've got a couple of things here. One, the aeration's fairly vigorous. When the rotifer culture is sort of running out of food and getting hungry, you'll start to see a lot of this foam. It doesn't tend to be really tenacious foam. When you touch at it, it'll actually sort of break. It's not really sticky like soap foam, but it does get foamy. The rotifer floss, or the flock trap that you see here, is really there just to catch rotifer poop and other flocculent material. It helps keep the culture pretty well clean and free of things that aren't rotifers. The one thing that I do like to do is to have something that's really clear, like a clear glass container, that I can take a sample of my rotifer culture, and I like to see some good optical clarity, meaning that it's not really cloudy. I'll see if I can get this thing to focus. So you can actually see plenty of stuff swirling around in there, with the exception of those couple big chunks. It's all rotifers. And at this point they're pretty hungry. There's not a lot of algae left in there. It's been a full day since they've been fed, but I think, as you can see, there's quite a few in the container. All of that sort of snowy stuff is all rotifers. And having a clear container in which to view the culture conditions outside of the bucket itself, which has a tendency to look often as though it's much darker, or that there's more food in it than there really is. It's much easier to get a picture of what that culture liquid really truly looks like. So you can see there, it looks a lot darker than what we're seeing here in this glass. So you need something clear to help you get a good picture of what's really going on there, because you might look at it in the bucket here and say, oh, there's plenty of food, it's got a nice dark, kind of dark color. But when we look here, it's pretty clear it doesn't. And what I'm going to do is harvest about a third of the rotifers, and I just use a small, this is about a 50 micron sieve, and I'm just going to collect about, in this case, about 4 liters. This is about a 12-liter culture or so. And what I like to do is let the floss sort of drain out most of the way. I'm going to get that out of my way at this point. And we're going to just pour rotifers through that sieve. Alright, so I've collected about 4 liters of rotifers for harvest, and you can see sort of the line that's in there, and some of the biofilm too, which is kind of slimy, a little bit dirty, not too big of a deal. And there's certainly more of it down inside of the container, on the walls and on the bottom. But I never really let it accumulate too far, because virtually every day I will use the floss after the harvest, and I'll go through and wipe the stuff down to remove some of this biofilm and waste that accumulates on the sides. And if you'll recall, this is the clarity and sort of the amount of rotifers that we have per mill in here. And then, just because I don't have room elsewhere, I'm going to dump those back in there. And I want to show you what the harvested rotifer looks like, just so we can get a good feel for how much material we're actually removing in terms of rotifers from the tank. So I'm just sort of back flushing that screen, and I've now poured that into the same exact glass. And as you can see, it's still a pretty darn clean harvest. There's not a lot of foreign debris or flocculent material, and a lot of rotifers in this container. And this is something that once my rotifer culture has reached good stability and a good number per mil, and this one runs around 400 per mil or so on average, then I'll take that harvested amount and my fish in my 100-gallon tank get a nice snack. And yeah, there's zebrafish. So we'll dump those guys in there. And they're going to go crazy when they realize that there's rotifers in there, and they're going to start eating them pretty quick. You'll start to see sort of frantic behavior begin to develop as they start to swim around and eat all of the plankton. But back to the rotifers. In order to ensure that I've got a nice clean rotifer tank, I'll take that floss material, and you can do it before or after you rinse it, unless it's just already terribly coated in biofilm, and I wipe the entirety of the surface area inside of here. And I'll wipe off all of the submerged parts of the rotifer culture apparatus. They go back in to the container, and I typically keep some water ready to go. This is pre-mixed rotifer ready water, meaning it's 15 parts per thousand, and water that's adequately purified or neutralized to be used for this purpose. And the next thing I'm going to do is wash this out with just some higher pressure water from the tap, and it's going to go right back into the container where it can start collecting some of that flocculent material that I just stirred up there. And then tomorrow we're going to start the process all over again, and when we do it this way, it tends to yield a really stable and pretty predictable rotifer culture from day to day. Alright, so last thing, the rotifer floss has been sprayed out with high pressure water. As you can see, it's not perfectly snow white. It doesn't need to be. It's going to be stained by the algae and so on. You can also see that the color got quite a bit darker. However, I should point out that's only about 15-16 mils of the very same food that you guys are probably feeding, which is RG Complete. And you may see here some sort of flocculent material in circulation, and that's exactly why we use the rotifer floss. And in fact, that's the stuff that tends to clog up the rotifer floss and stain it the dark color that you may see as the rotifer culture is running, or if you disturb it or scrape the insides. And I took a sample of this culture after I fed it, just as a comparison, and now we have this is post-harvest, so the rotifer density is going to be reduced a little bit, and really the goal here is just to show you the color. So it's not a huge change in color in the glass, although it really looks like a pretty big change in the bucket. But again, it's only about 15 or 16 mils of RG Complete, and I find that that's enough to keep me in the 400 to 500 rotifers per milliliter, as long as I am consistent about when I feed and how much I feed and how much I harvest, which is about a third of the culture. And here you can see I've got a new container set up with some 15 parts per thousand water that should be good and dissolved and ready for use tomorrow.